Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Well, at 11 o'clock this morning, the Brexit Party will announce its election strategy. And Nigel Farage is expected to confirm where his party will be standing candidates in next month's general election. One of the constituencies that he's being tipped for is Thurrock in Essex, where more than 70% of referendum voters chose to leave the EU. Seema Katecha reports from there.
Underneath a skyline of giant cranes lies Tilbury. A social housing estate surrounds a dozen or so shops, including a barber's, a taxi service and a couple of cafes.
I'm not far right as National Front used to be, but BNP is round about how right-wing I am personally, yeah.
That's Andy. Like more than 70% of the people who live in the constituency of Thurrock, he voted to leave the EU. He argues that heavy migration leads to the loss of a country's identity and says the Brexit Party could help slim down the number of foreigners.
In my opinion, race and culture go hand in hand, and in able to protect culture, you need to protect race, and that's why it's important to have a level of national identity. So
You're saying you're not racist?
No, of course not. No.
I've had a couple of calls from people who were waiting to contribute to the Donald Trump conversation, so we shall get those out of the way, out of courtesy, because we get people hanging on for so long. And then we'll move into this astonishing new chapter in post-truth or Brexit politics. James is in Islington. James, what would you like to say?
Good afternoon, James. I must say I'm a regular listener to yourself and your colleagues as well. What I would say is, in regards to what you've been saying earlier on, I see obviously you and one of the previous callers have gone on about Trump being a racist. Now, I think that it's a bit far-fetched. He obviously has come out with things that are very stupid to say. However, what I will say in regards to that is, in regards to ethnic minority employment rate in America, it's at a record low now. So,
yeah, and mate, the racism line is about telling people who were born in America to go back where they came from. So let's just park that and move on.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Good.
In regards to actually the Trump and Farage interview last night,
yes.
I did listen to that, and I was quite impressed with what he had to say. Admittedly, obviously,
but you already like him, and you don't think he's a racist.
Well, I don't think so. I'll say race is a bit far-fetched. So maybe he's come out with idiotic comments, so I'd say
but
that.
Telling people who were born in America to go back where they came from isn't idiotic or far-fetched, my friend. It's racist.
Well, it's down to interpretation at the end of the day.
No, it really isn't.
No, obviously, we obviously disagree on this issue. However, the point I was going to call to make is...
Let me guess what the point you were going to make was.
Okay.
I think it was really bad for Jeremy Corbyn that Donald Trump criticised him, and good for Boris Johnson that he praised him.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I personally do think that is the reason. The best,
Go on, then, let me ask you why.
Analogy. Well, the reason I think that is purely I live in Islington, which is a very Remain and obviously Jeremy Corbyn.
Mate, I'm going to have to wait. I'm going to have to wait for the biography to find out more details. Why do you think it was bad for Jeremy Corbyn to be criticised by Donald Trump?
Well, the US is our biggest ally. There's no denying that. With the US,
the US was our biggest ally when Barack Obama told us not to do Brexit. Did you applaud him?
Well, look, obviously not. But however,
why obviously?
With Trump,
why obviously not?
Coming out, he's promoting a free trade deal.
Why obviously not?
Well, because personally, I've supported Brexit.
So it's got nothing to do with America's status or its relationship with us, and everything to do with whether or not Donald Trump says something you agree with. But anyway, let's just focus on the central question. I'll remind you what it is. Why do you think it's bad for Corbyn to be criticised by Donald Trump?
I personally think it's bad for Corbyn, purely for the fact is
yes?
Trump's come out, he said he wants a free trade deal with the United Kingdom, and he has obviously said that with Boris's deal there may be limitations to how far...
Yes, but why is any of this bad for Corbyn?
Well, it's bad for Corbyn because Corbyn sat on the fence throughout the entire Brexit process, and he is...
But why does Donald Trump criticising Corbyn do damage to Corbyn?
Well, because a lot of people, especially, well, maybe not in London, but when you leave London, people aren't that keen on Corbyn. Obviously, he's got a lot of...
Yeah, but that's not an answer to the question I asked, is it? You're telling me about people who already don't like Corbyn. Why would being criticised by Donald Trump be bad for Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, it would be bad for Jeremy Corbyn because a lot of people see
James?
America's our largest ally, and if the leader of the United States is openly saying that Corbyn would be bad...
But the leader of the United States openly said that Brexit was bad, and it didn't change your mind about anything, did it?
It didn't.
So let's go back to the question that you've rung in to answer for the 7th time of asking. Why would being criticised by Donald Trump last night be bad news for Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, because all Brexit, anyone who wants Brexit to succeed, anyone who
wants Brexit to succeed is not going to have been planning to vote for Jeremy Corbyn, are they? So let's try for the 8th time.
Not necessarily.
Why?
They may well have. You've got the Labour leave areas in the north. They could well be voting for Labour. And there's a lot of places where you could put a Labour vote on a donkey and they would vote for Labour.
It's like we're having a sort of word salad. Listen, I'm not going to embarrass you by asking you 11 times, but I will ask you once more. In terms of people who had a position on Jeremy Corbyn at 5 o'clock yesterday and then heard Donald Trump criticise Jeremy Corbyn, and you believe that that might have made them look more negatively at Jeremy Corbyn. Just explain your thinking to me. How would that have happened?
Because he's promoting the free trade deal with the United Kingdom. Now, anyone who wants Brexit to succeed or wants to move on...
I just can't do this anymore. Last chance, all right? Why is it bad for Corbyn? Because he criticised Johnson as well, James. I don't know if you missed that bit.
I know.
Yeah, good. So why is it good for Johnson and bad for Corbyn?
Well, because... there's a number of reasons for it.
Well, just one. I'd kill for one at the moment, mate.
Well, at the end of the day, this is Jeremy Corbyn could potentially become Prime Minister. Now, we want a good working relationship with our closest
But he criticised Johnson's deal as well. He criticised Johnson's deal as well. So how is that good for Johnson?
He said Johnson is a great guy on numerous occasions.
Yes, but he criticised the withdrawal agreement that the whole election was called about. So how can he be good for Johnson and bad for Corbyn?
Well, because he's promoting a free trade agreement. He says he wants a free trade agreement with the United
States. He said he didn't want Johnson. So how is it good for Johnson for Donald Trump to say, I don't want the thing that you can offer me?
He didn't say anything. He didn't say it's not.
I've done my bit, honestly. It's not a charity, it's a radio programme.
Fracking was suspended at this site in Lancashire in August after a magnitude 2.9 earthquake. 3 months of uncertainty later, and the government has now called a halt to shale gas extraction, quote, until and unless it's proved safe. Falling short of the ban the protesters who've been guarding the gates for 3 years here want. Is this a halt by a government committed to reducing a need for fossil fuels, or a temporary turning of the proverbial taps?
Shale gas offers huge potential in the United Kingdom, there's no doubt about that. And there's also no doubt that in our determination to decarbonise, the continued use of gas will be very important for the next several decades. So there's no doubt that extracting more natural gas in the United Kingdom would be very attractive.
Bim Afalami, let me start with you. I'm very confused by what Andrea Leadsom said today, because, you know, you're halting fracking now and saying you want to move to zero carbon net, and yet she's saying in the future extracting natural gas will be very attractive. Why is natural gas very attractive when you're trying to get to net zero?
Well, I think that the key thing that we've said today is that after our careful work, we didn't act in a knee-jerk way. We've decided that we're going to ban fracking because we don't believe it's safe. And going forward, of course, our aim is to get to net zero by 2050, and there'll need to be a range of different things
with lots
needed,
of fracking,
which gas will be part of. No, not necessarily. That's why we have banned it. Now, you know, opposition parties,
you haven't banned it,
some of which are represented here, well, that's exactly what we've said. What we have said is it is not safe, and that's why we have banned it at this present time.
Well, no, the government says it's a moratorium. A moratorium is temporary. A ban is permanent. That's the difference. So you haven't banned it, and here we have the Energy and Climate Change Secretary saying you're looking forward to fracking lots in the future.
Well, no. What we've done is we've done as much as you can do, which is with the technology and the information available to us at the moment, we are saying we are not doing fracking.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, the leader of the Commons, has been accused of insulting the memory of the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire after he appeared to suggest that people should have used common sense on the night of the fire 2 years ago and fled the tower block. In an interview with LBC Radio, Mr Rees-Mogg said that having read the recent report on the fire, he would now ignore the fire brigade's advice to stay put. He has offered a profound apology, saying he would hate to upset the people of Grenfell. 72 people died in the blaze in June 2017. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning reports.
If there's one tragedy it's easy to show sympathy with and be sensitive about, it's Grenfell. The inquiry finding just last week residents shouldn't have been told to stay put in their flats for so long. Yet one government minister has managed to upset the survivors.
The more one's read over the weekend about the report and about the chances of people surviving, if you just ignore what you're told and leave, you are so much safer. And I think if either of us were in a fire, whatever the fire brigade said, we would leave the burning building. It just seems the common sense thing to do.
Could he possibly be doing the secret bidding of the Conservative Party? I mean, is there some sort of epic mind game in play here that either the Daily Telegraph hasn't spotted or is somehow colluding with when they run the front page, splash, Farage could ruin UK's hope of Brexit? I don't know. Maybe we're overcomplicating things. A man who can make up an assassination attempt, despite the fact that his own children would see it, is probably not someone that the rest of us can morally analyse in any way, because we couldn't quite conceive of ever stooping so low. Or can you? Maybe you've got a slightly more positive analysis. You bought the snake oil off him, now he's legged it. Do you still want the snake oil? Mark's in Horsham. Mark, what do you reckon?
I will still vote for Nigel and the Brexit Party, even if he doesn't run, but I would prefer him to run.
Right.
MP.
Yes. And would you like me to clean your guttering for £25,000?
I still think, I think one of the reasons he may not be running is because, say, they only got 10 MPs.
Mate, they weren't going to get any MPs. They're not going to get any MPs.
He won't have as much say as he would do as leading in Europe.
But he can do both, Mark. I hate it when this happens. I have to point out simple facts to you, and you've rung up to express support for a man who doesn't tell you the truth. He can be both. Could be an MEP and an MP. And then if Brexit happens under Boris Johnson's deal, he won't be in the European Parliament anymore. So just talk me through how that would give him more power than being in Westminster.
No, I mean, I personally would prefer him to run for MEP, and I don't know the reason why.
But mate, we're leaving the European Union. He's already an MEP, Mark.
Sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant an MP.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
So I personally believe.
Well, you just said that you thought that he wasn't running to be an MP because he'd have more power by being an ex-MEP.
Well, I'm just saying,
still wanting Brexit.
If they only had 10 seats in Parliament, which is quite possible, I'm being a realist here as well.
You're not, mate. You're being a fantasist. They're not going to get any.
I knew it was risky rigging you.
It's not risky, Mark. I'm here to help, mate. There's a few little massive errors there that you've been labouring under for a few years now, but you've only been on the radio for 2 minutes and already...
We've got a different view.
No, these aren't views. These aren't views. He is an MEP. After Brexit, he can't be. That's just a fact. You voted for him not to be an MEP anymore when you voted for Brexit, Mark.
Well, what I'm saying is I believe in a clean, straight get out.
There's no such thing, Mark.
I don't like Boris's deal. I'm normally a Conservative.
There's no such thing as a clean, straight get out.
I don't like Boris. I'm just telling you, I don't like Boris's
Why
deal.
not, Mark?
Because I think it still ties us in. And
in what way?
Is correct on that.
No,
it ties us in military, which I'm very concerned about.
No, it doesn't.
It does. It will tie us in for a certain amount of time, and we've got to get out. We are responsible for so many millions.
Let's just pause there, because I unlike Nigel, I respect you enough to actually display interest in the words that you say. So when you say it will tie us in for a certain amount of time, can you tell me precisely what you mean by that?
Well, from what I'm aware of, and you might know more than I do.
Well, no, I can't, because you know that it will tie us in for a certain amount of time. So I'd like to know, what will it tie us into, and what is the certain amount of time?
It's probably at least 2 years.
What do you mean it's probably at least 2 years? That sounds like you've got no idea.
No, I've heard different things.
So we'll be tied in to the military side of things for at least 2 years.
Yeah, and there's decisions that we've tied in a while ago into the EU.
For example?
Where if we wanted to... OK, for instance, let's pick on a country like Israel, for instance.
Pardon?
We've always been friends with them. I'm just picking on a general country, which is an easy one to pick on.
Right.
If we, for any reason, they were under a major attack and we wanted to defend them...
Yes.
You know, and the rest of Europe would say no...
Yes.
We would have problems in doing that.
You mean like Iraq, when France was passionately opposed to it and we piled in with George W. Bush?
Yeah,
while we were members of the European Union.
No,
you mean like that?
That was a different treaty then. We signed more of our rights away since then.
But we didn't, Mark. You see, you've read this on Facebook and it's not true. And yet here you are still claiming to be did you call yourself a Brexiteer when you rang in?
Yes, I did call myself a Brexiteer.
And here you are live on the radio saying stuff that's not true, and yet you still think that you cast your vote correctly. It's built on nonsense, my friend. And guess who fed you that nonsense? No, we're not going to agree to disagree. There is absolutely nothing in the claim that there are new treaty obligations kicking in 2020 or 2022 that would prevent us from offering military support that other EU allies didn't want to cooperate with. It's not a view, it's not an opinion, it's not an agree to disagree. You have believed lies and cast your vote as a result of those lies, and yet for psychological reasons you still support the way you voted, despite the fact that your reasons for doing it were all false, mate.
OK, if you take the interview with Nigel on Sunday morning in the Andrew Marr show, if you take that for instance, Nigel made it quite clear what was going on.
Did he? What?
And Andrew normally tears people down quite weirdly, but he said, you know, he let him carry on.
Yeah, so what is going on then, Mark?
Well, he let him say about what we're getting when we're going out. This is BBC, which is more left-wing.
How is the BBC left-wing when Farage has been on Question Time more than anybody else on the planet?
On the whole, if you look at Question Time, again, sidetracked onto this.
Well, no, if I was you, I'd welcome the sidetrack, because I want to go back to this treaty that would prevent us from cooperating militarily with allies if our European Union partners didn't want us to. Where did you learn that?
I learned that listening by Nigel Farage in different places I've listened to.
Okay,
I haven't got them at my fingertip.
But you should have before you ring national radio, let alone cast a vote, cast an actual vote, exercise your pure democratic right, and it turns out that you did it on a lie. And yet you're cross with the person who's pointing out the lie, you're not cross with the liar, Mark. How long will it take you to cross that river, do you think?
I'll give you this one. Okay, next time I ring you up when I'm at home and I've got all the information.
No. You've now got all the information, Mark, because I've given it to you because I respect you.
Okay, but we will disagree on it.
No, we can't disagree on it because I've given you all the information. There is no opinion here unless you can provide me with a scintilla of evidence that continuing European Union membership would prevent us from undertaking a military campaign akin to the one in Iraq, which many of our European partners didn't endorse or join in.
We have signed up to stuff.
We have not, you see.
In the last 6 months.
Yes, but here's me getting paid to do this, telling you that we haven't. And here's you not knowing where it's come from or who said it or which bit of Facebook you got it from, saying that we have. So who do you think's right?
Okay, I'll give you this one.
No. I don't want you to give me anything, Mark. I'm giving you this one. I'm giving you the knowledge now to form an opinion based on facts rather than lies and feelings. And the only opinion you can form based on facts is that the people who told you this nonsense about treaties and armies lied to you. So why would you still trust them or want them to be in Parliament?
Oh, right. Okay, I will try and find out the information and I will come back to you.
Doesn't really work like that, mate, but I would love... we've got your number. What day should we ring you tomorrow?
No, I work as a coach driver, so it doesn't work like that.
All right, well, where's your next rest stop?
I need time to get the information for it.
Okay, well, we'll check in with you in a couple of days then.
Okay, no problem.
All right, and if it turns out you've been conned, who are you going to get cross with, me or Nigel?
We'll wait and see.
No, answer the question. No, of course you don't believe you've been conned. That's why you're having this meltdown on the radio and talking about driving coaches.
I'm not having a meltdown.
So when it turns out you've been conned, who are you going to get cross with, me or the person who conned you?
There is other issues What would
Well, we
still
can
make me
talk
have
about
the
them
same
if you
views.
want. We can talk about the other issues if you
I'm
want.
just about to go into work.
Of course
so
you are.
Unfortunately, I've got to work. No, I am.
All right, mate.
Trust
Okay.
me.
No, I
Okay.
do trust you, Mark. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
I trust you to be intelligent enough to realise the difference between fact and lies. And you're very close. I can feel it. Have a great day.
All the best. Cheers.
Right, there you go. A Nigel Farage fan there. Is this just me going not in my day, or does the standard of service in shop? All right, we might go on to that story a little later in the programme, but I want a couple more theories first on what creepy Uncle Nigel is actually up to with this latest decision to prove the power of democracy and how important it is for elected politicians to make our decisions in this country by not seeking to become an elected politician and ducking out of democracy. Astonishing. Sarah, put the dogs in the porch and shut the door, all right? Sarah, put the dogs in the porch and shut the door, because we're going to cross live now to Nigel Farage for the definitive explanation of why he is not having an 8th attempt at getting into the House of Commons. Over to you, Nigel. Ah. 7 minutes after 11 is the time. Dickie is in Windsor. Dickie, what do you think he's up to?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Lovely to talk to you.
Likewise.
I feel I've spent the last 2 years shouting at you on the radio, metaphorically speaking.
Shouting, I love you.
And well, it's very kind of you to say, and I love your passion for it.
Carry on.
You've nearly had me a couple of times.
Nearly had
not
you.
No, not biblically, obviously.
Yes.
You've nearly had me over to your side, but it's about Farage.
Yes.
I mean, come on. Can you picture the scene? He gets elected.
Yes.
So on a Friday when he's running his surgery, can you picture the scene? Beryl, 84, going in to see her local MPs to complain about the plumbing in her rented accommodation. He's not interested in that.
No, but there's plenty of parliamentarians. No, I know that, and you know that, so I'm not quite sure what it is we disagree on. But there are plenty of.
Go on. I am a Brexiteer.
No,
but I'm one of those lefty Brexiteers, which I know are very unpopular in my own party.
Yes.
But
Well, listen, I've done my bit today for the terminally deluded, so we'll let that one pass.
No.
Yes. No, hang on. No, you've told me what you think. There are loads of people in Parliament that don't commit as much as they could. In fact, some people on your side of politics, I think Tam Dael famously didn't think that was part of his responsibilities. He prioritised parliamentary politics way over constituency politics, and all of these claims. No, it isn't. I mean, he did all of these claims. I might have got the wrong hardcore left-wing Labour legend, but forgive me, there definitely was one.
Now, calm down. Don't be like that. You sound in such a good mood today.
I'm in a great mood. Don't stop being weird. So here's the thing: why did he try to get into Parliament 7 times if he secretly never wanted to?
Well, no, because he knew he would never get in. Now he thinks, I've actually got a genuinely good chance of getting in. And I'm
completely at odds. This is completely at odds with all the polling.
To do actual work.
Mate, if he thought he was going to win, what they took legal action last time he lost.
Yeah, but
what do you mean? That's a zinger.
That there's a weight behind him that he's actually thinking, oh, well, what have I done here?
No, but stop putting through people arguing that he doesn't want to, that he secretly wants to, he was worried about winning. He's just bonkers. He tried to go to court last time he lost. The idea that he secretly never wanted to be an MP at all is just absolutely absurd. 10 minutes after 11 is the time. Dickie, good luck to you.
Let's talk to Joel. He is in the newsroom and has been drilling down on 2 particular spending commitments that have been made by the Conservatives. Joel.
That's right, Joe. There are 2 key spending claims in Boris Johnson's Daily Telegraph article this morning, and we've heard them before. £34 billion now for the NHS and £14 billion now for schools. I've been talking to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the IFS, about both of these claims. On the NHS, you'll remember that big announcement from Theresa May last year to give NHS England an extra £20.5 billion a year over 5 years. Now, the IFS think that when Boris Johnson talks about £34 billion, he's actually referring to Theresa May's £20.5 billion. It's just that he's giving the figure in cash terms, so ignoring inflation, whereas Theresa May was giving the figure in real terms, taking account of inflation. On the extra 14 billion for schools, there are two things going on here. First, again, it's a cash figure, not a real terms figure. Secondly, they've done what the IFS have called double counting each year. Now, this is a bit complicated, but imagine if your employer says they'll raise your salary by £500 for each of the next 3 years. You'd probably say your salary is going up by £1,500 in total, but more unusually, you could count it by going back to the original baseline at the start of each year. So you could say it's going up by £500 in year 1, plus £1,000 in year 2, plus £1,500 in year 3, totaling £3,000. But that's an odd way to do it. Now, in the IFS's view, they think that's how Boris Johnson has got to the £14 billion figure, by ignoring inflation and by double counting. And they say if you don't do those things, then the actual figure is £4.3 billion a year extra for schools in England over 3 years. So in real terms, and counting the different years in the conventional way, the planned money for NHS England over 5 years is £20.5 billion, not £34 billion, and the money for schools in England over 3 years is £4.3 billion, not £14 billion.
Do you accept that those figures are bogus? You're misleading the public.
No, what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to kick these figures out in the manifestos from both sides and costing over the next few weeks.
But on those two figures, they're wrong, aren't they?
No, because people want to know what they're, you know, from this starting point, from benchmarking at this moment in time, what the NHS is going to be having in 2, 3, 4 years' time, and similar with education. And
should it be in cash terms or real terms? I mean, can we get an honesty pledge from you, as Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, that all figures will be in real terms, not cash terms? So we'll be taking account of inflation, and there'll be no double counting, which is what Gordon Brown used to be accused of doing.
So what we're going to be doing, we will be making it very, very clear what the terms are of the manifesto costings, and you'll see that when it comes out in its full manifesto, in the full book that has the costings around it. People will be able to make their judgments at that time. But you come back to the fundamental point, is that we're levelling up our education funding, so each pupil, per pupil, funding is going up. For every
because you cut it so dramatically beforehand.
It just seems all a little bit too calculated. You see Watson resign and Austin resign, and if you have a look a bit deeper, these are all friends, part of the Labour Friends of Israel, which is absolutely fine. You can be part of whatever you want to be part of, but obviously Corbyn has an opposite viewpoint, and he's quite in favour of Palestinian rights, and you know, as well as recognising issues in Israel, he's quite in favour of Palestinian rights.
Ian Austin has been very clear. It's why he left the party. I mean, he was adopted by Jewish parents, and he feels that the anti-Semitism displayed by some supporters of Jeremy Corbyn is utterly intolerable, and therefore he refused to continue tolerating it. I'd have thought the parallel, if you were going to draw a parallel between the two, it would be more to do with Gordon Brown than Labour Friends of Israel, wouldn't it? They're both from that wing of the party. I mean, Chris Williamson's resignation letter is...
What's Gordon Brown got to do with it now? You know, right now, Austin's come out quite unequivocally and told everybody that...
To vote Conservative.
He can't vote, yeah. And that's what really strikes me, is it being slightly calculated. Yes, Corbyn does have a slightly different view on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And I think that is the only thing, really, that tangibly you can even say that makes him anywhere near the realms, although I completely disagree, of some sort of anti-Semitism. Just the fact that he wants to support the rights of Palestinian people.
No, but that's not it, is it? I mean, you don't help the cause when you do this, my friend, because...
Go on, explain.
Well, I have done so many times, but we're now talking about Jeremy Corbyn. You're denying anti-Semitism.
I'm not, no, I'm not denying it. I believe it exists, but what I'm saying is, I don't believe Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic. He's got a view about a conflict that's going on in the world where both sides...
Why did he like that Facebook picture of the Jewish men holding up the world's economy?
Do you think he's on Facebook all the time, or do you think it's one of them mistakes where somebody who's managing his...
Have you ever done that? Have you ever accidentally liked a heinously anti-Semitic image?
Not necessarily anti-Semitic. But this is another point.
Dave, this is what I mean. This is what I mean about you not doing anyone any favours.
Go on, explain that.
I already have, and you've said, he just accidentally liked a massively anti-Semitic Facebook post.
I don't know, but what I'm saying...
No, but here you are. This is what people are hearing. Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitic. What about that time he liked the really anti-Semitic picture? What about that time he's sort of invited people into the House of Commons with extremely pungent views about the Holocaust? And, it was just an accident. Or maybe he was just there for dinner. That's what people are hearing.
Again, I don't. Again,
I know you don't, and there's nothing I can say that's going to get through. There's nothing I can say that's going to get through your skull, mate. I can tell that now, but I'm just telling you how it sounds.
I understand that. That's why people don't typically want to tackle the issue, because it does sound a particular way.
People don't want to tackle the issue, mate. They've not been talking about anything else for the last 5 years.
No, I mean, people don't want to put the opposite point of view across.
There is no opposite point of view, except to sound ridiculous by saying, I think he accidentally liked a massively anti-Semitic
picture.
picture.
Say that.
Yes, you did.
Well, what I'm saying is, you know for certain it was Jeremy Corbyn on his laptop that press like.
Well, why would he apologise if it wasn't?
Because that's politics, you have to.
Oh, I see. Yeah, and you don't think this sounds like you're making a free pass? And I don't think he's anti-Semitic.
No,
what about that massively anti-Semitic thing he did? Oh, I don't think that was him.
No, what I'm saying is,
I know what you're saying, Dave. I've heard it all before. It's you that needs to pay more attention to what you're saying.
I suppose if you're not a Catholic or you have no experience at all of any moments of confession, inside or outside a confessional box, this all sounds rather strange to you, I wonder. This conversation about whether priests should be obliged to reveal details of a child being in danger if somebody reveals that to them inside the confessional. Jamie's called from Stockport on this. Hello, Jamie.
Well, be gentle, Sheila. I'm a first-time caller, so...
Okay.
I want to say all this for a long time. But this also just screams to me of another example where the church, religion, seems to be above the law. And as a gay man, I hear all the time religious conscience, religious freedom for... But so I'm allowed to be discriminated against because of the church, because of how they might think, and that's okay according to the law.
In what way are you discriminated against by the church, in your view?
Say again, sorry.
In what way are you discriminated against by the church?
Oh, the whole marriage thing, and the whole the Northern Ireland, the cake shop. It just seems that religious views can trump human rights and law to a certain extent, rights laws, and that's kind of okay. I'm allowed to be turned away to be married in a church because that vicar might not want to do so. That vicar wouldn't be allowed to turn away a black person, but they can turn me away.
Do you want to get married in a church?
Well, no, but it's the principle of the matter. And
No, it's not necessarily the point. I was just curious.
Iain just said to me that the religious kind of society, or part of society again, is allowed to get away with not purporting such heinous things. And it just really frustrates me.
They're two slightly different things, aren't they? I mean, from the
very different things,
from the point of view of a church saying to you, and they can do it kindly if they do it, you know. From the point of view of a church, Catholic or otherwise, because it isn't just the Catholic Church who takes that view. If a vicar or a priest were to say, "Look, Jamie, I'm sorry, I can't marry you in the church because the church does not recognise your union as a marriage. It may be a civil marriage, it may be legal under the law of the land, and it would be if you got married in a local hotel or wherever.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. I hope you're very happy, and we're always here for you if you need us. But the Catholic Church, Catholic teaching, does not recognise your relationship as marriage.
But they're allowed to not recognise that.
Yes, they are, because of religious freedom, and you're allowed to disagree with them, and you're allowed to walk away and go somewhere else to get married. I mean, I
have this problem. Why are they given special dispensation to discriminate against me when they would not be legally allowed to say to a black person, "We're not going to marry you because we don't really agree with."
But the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church has no teachings on the colour of people's skin.
No, but my point, Sheila, is they're allowed to have teaching and discriminate against me because they're religious. It's a religion. That's allowed.
I know, Jamie, but that's because you live I'll tell you, because you live in a country where, thankfully, you can choose your sexual orientation and partner, and you can choose your religion freely as well. You can choose your sexual orientation and partner, and you can choose your religion freely as well.
But that, to me, goes to the bottom of it. Sexuality isn't a choice. Religion is. So their choice trumps my being. And that's where it hurts a little bit. Because my being, I can't change my being. Someone's chosen to follow the word of God, however you want to put it. They've chosen that. So their choice allows them to trump my core being.
Well, I think a deep religious faith, if you ask somebody who has a deep religious faith, it won't necessarily feel like a choice.
Well, whether it feels like it or not, that's the fact of the matter.
Not necessarily.
They've chosen to take that. I've chosen not to be religious. People choose to be, and they get into a really deep spiritual connection with God. Well, that's fine. But that's still a choice, and that's still a path that they've chosen to go down. I've not chosen to be a gay man. I've not chosen to go through all the hassle I've gone through over my 40 years.
So many people telling me that childcare cost is the issue. We've had calls on that already. There are texts saying the same thing. Frank says with regard to childcare, it's a lifestyle choice. If you can't afford it, don't have children. Parents already receive child benefits. If you want a career, that's fine, but why should I pay for it, says Frank. Well, there's another Frank in Northampton who said childcare costs are just too expensive. We have 2 kids under 5 and 1 on the way. Wife had to give up her career. Hopefully things improve in the future. And this text says, in response to those suggesting you shouldn't have babies if you can't afford them, circumstances can change. I had 2 children that were planned for. I saved for my maternity both times, had 9 months off with each of them and worked out what childcare I could afford. After returning to work after the second child, I was made redundant and was unable to get a job earning the same wage. I've spent 5 years working evenings, so we didn't have to pay for childcare. My children are now 7 and 11, and I work in a school so I can be there in the holidays. It does not get easier. Childcare is the issue. John is in Chelmsford. John, how would you contribute to this debate?
I'm enraged that everything seems to get dumped upon small business. We seem to be the scapegoats when the governments want to offer things to people. This country is overpopulated as it is. So whatever happened to flat family planning? My mum, when she was raising her 3 children, she had 3 or 4 jobs on the go. She didn't get any assistance from the government. She didn't get any childcare benefit payments or anything like that, and she brought us up.
But are you saying that's what the system should be now?
I'm not necessarily saying that's what the system should be now. We should be able to help people when we can, but I think we give too much. People need to be able to afford to have children. If they can't afford to have children, then they shouldn't be having them. Now,
so only rich people can, only rich or moderately well-off people should have children?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But people need to be aware of the cost implications, as in life. You know, having a car, there are cost implications with that, as there are children. And people need to bear that in mind when they're having children. If they can't afford childcare, then where's the sense in having children? Why should I, who stopped at 2 children, have to pay for somebody who's having 3, 4, 5 children?
And you run a small business?
I run a small business. I care about my employees. I have 11 employees. Let's take pensions. Now, all of their pensions have been pushed upon me now. I have to pay their pensions. When I retire, no one is going to be paying my pension. I have to sort that out for myself, and that's fine. I haven't got a problem with that. But when you start extending paternity or maternity leave and stuff, that has such a severe effect on small businesses. But Labour certainly don't seem to care very much about small businesses. And Conservatives, maybe they do slightly more, but not a great amount.
If it was down to you, John, how would you write the manifestos? How would you frame maternity leave and maternity pay, for example?
I think it should be, and you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember which country it is, whether it's Switzerland or Sweden. I believe it's one of the two. For benefits, for example, if somebody falls upon hard times and loses their job, they will get benefits for a set period of time, and they are encouraged then to go out and find a job because they know that those benefits are going to finish at some point. At the moment, it's an open-ended checkbook, as far as I'm concerned, in this country.
Well, that's benefits. I'm really thinking about maternity and paternity rights.
Well, if you keep extending, I don't know how it's worked. I haven't really given it much consideration. However, I know that it already costs us a fortune, the country, and by extending it and giving more.
But you don't know, do you, John? Because you haven't really looked into it, you said.
No, I haven't looked into it. But what they're saying is extend it and give more paternity and maternity leave. And that will just crucify small businesses.
But you've no idea what any of this costs?
I don't
Not even for yourself?
No.
No. All right. We'll leave the conversation there, John, and get back to me when you've got a clearer idea of what it is you're saying. And on Twitter, someone who describes herself as girly SWAT solicitor Carrie Ann says the audacity Not to mention stupidity of the small business owner complaining he's paying his 11 employees' pension, but no one's paying his. They are, mate. They are.
People who either don't understand immigration or deliberately, who do understand it but deliberately misrepresent it in public utterances. Thank you, Brian. John in Sutton. Hello, John.
Hello there.
How are you doing?
I'm all right, yeah, good.
What did you want to say, John? Go on.
Well, just about... well, let me start off with as the lady who couldn't get her husband seen to. Simple. Because there's too many people in the country. If you had an unlimited amount of money to throw at the NHS, and like I said to your researcher, I love the NHS. I've had 4 children with it, and if I've got to wait 2 or 3 hours, so what? There's somebody there to take care of me and look after me and probably save my life. So, all right, I might be a bit inconvenienced. And like I said, I was in America on holiday. I went to a doctor's to get some pills. It cost me £200. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But everything is about, and what you just said there, I think you was like kind of referring to me. People who understand me don't really understand me or doing that.
I wasn't referring to you, John. I'd never spoken to you in my life. I wasn't referring to you.
My type of people.
No, I wasn't.
I do understand immigration. And let me tell you something. I'm from the north, and whatever...
So am I.
What anybody ever says, the referendum was about immigration. Now, the first thing they'll say is, yeah, but what about the 1.5 million Brits that work abroad? Okay. Spread over, how many countries is in 500 million people? In Germany, in Austria, in Spain, in all them countries, in France, everywhere you go, you do not go to an hotel and find an English person speaking there, not English speaking, English citizen working behind the counter. You tell me an hotel in London or anywhere surrounding, and even up the north now, then when you go in, there's somebody with a foreign accent.
And
there.
what's the problem with that, John, if you need staff in it?
No, let me finish.
Okay.
It's not being racist or xenophobic. It's the point is people, it's like, it's a glut all at once. We've always been used to immigration, but you haven't had it like an invasion, like come up the north. London is a completely different place to the north. If you lived up there or you know people, you know.
John,
it's a complete...
John, can I speak now?
I mean?
Well, can I speak now?
Yes,
can I speak now? I'm from the north, in case you didn't know. Right. I'm regularly in the north. I went to university in the northeast, and I'm regularly in the northeast as well. So should we get the whole north? You don't know the north thing out of the way. I do know the north.
Right, okay then.
Right, okay. And, you are quite within your rights to say that you are uncomfortable or you don't like it when you find foreign people at the reception desk of a hotel or a pub or a bar or a restaurant.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, what do you mean?
Every hotel you're going, and now it's up the north. It never used to be.
And is that a problem, or do you welcome it?
No, I don't welcome it.
All right, so it is a problem for you then.
Germany is very German.
Yeah.
Spain is very Spanish.
Yeah, all right.
I mean, I suppose you're saying like I'm a racist, but
no,
I'm not.
John, please. No, you're putting words. John, you've got to let me speak, or this is just you ranting. It's not a conversation, and we don't really want you ranting. Can you stop ranting and let me speak? Yes or no?
Go on then.
Okay, thank you. Right, you are now putting words in my mouth. I have not called you a racist. I don't intend to call you a racist. Okay, but what I am hearing is discomfort on your part at the numbers of foreign people that you see at reception desks in hotels and pubs. So that's all I was saying a moment ago.
Exactly.
Right. Now, if we removed them all. Right? Yeah. Or just ask them to not stay and to go back home or whatever. If that's what we did, do you accept that some businesses would fail because they didn't have enough staff, some shops would close because they didn't have enough staff, that hospitals would have even fewer people working on busy nights in winter in A&E and in GP service? Let me finish, then I promise I'll let you come back. Do you accept that if we did that, that would be partly the result? And what are you going to do about that? Those gaps. What are you going to do about those gaps?
Yeah, but partly. But in itself, if you removed all them people, like you said, there wouldn't be nowhere near the population need to be served, would there? Really, truthfully, you know.
Well, so the restaurants are full of foreigners as well. There's no people from the north. The restaurants and the hotels that you're talking about, they're all full of foreigners as well, are they? There's no British people using these services.
No, they are now. They never used to be up the north. As you know, they never used to be. As I said, London...
I don't know that because I'm from an immigrant city. So
for 35 years.
I'm from an immigrant city. It's never been my experience, John. Again, I think what we've got from John there is a really typical problem in this conversation. That when you say, okay, I hear you, you don't like it. You don't like it. You don't like foreign people being in the same in the numbers that you see them and hear them. You don't like them being where you are. All right, fair enough. So we remove them. Then what? Then what? Tell me. Then what?
And Lee's in Basildon. Lee, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James. Yeah, sorry, but I've got to disagree with you. I'm probably one of those ones that's going to say, where does it end? Because I'd say basic necessity, I'd say food. So what we got to do? Privatise Tesco?
Pardon?
I said, you're saying having broadband is a basic necessity in the 21st century.
Yes.
Well, I'm saying food's more of a basic necessity. So what do we do? Privatise Tesco, Sainsbury's? I don't know. You tell me.
I don't understand the point you think you're making, Lee.
No, you just said having broadband is a basic necessity.
Yes.
So I'd say a more basic necessity would be food.
Right.
And water.
Yes.
So privatise Thames Water, everyone gets free water. Privatise the supermarkets, everyone gets free food.
They have privatised Thames Water, Lee. I think you mean nationalised.
Sorry, nationalised.
That's all right.
And
So
everyone gets free water.
here's the thing. You know what money is?
Yeah.
And you know that it's impossible not to receive some money, even from the state, if you are a member of British society. Yes?
Yeah.
And you know when you go to Tesco's, you know what you use to buy food?
Yes.
What is it?
Money.
Money. So the reason why we have a welfare state is exactly to ensure that a basic necessity like food is available to everybody. So let's start again.
Okay, well, broadband ain't... Well, you're just saying the basic necessity. I mean, I know money.
No, we haven't started again, Lee. We've gone back and rewound what we did before. We've dealt with that. I've explained to you the relationship between basic necessities like food and money and the welfare state and taxation. So now we're back to fibre broadband in every home, funded by taxation, and you're here to say, where will it end? Are you?
Well, yeah, where does it end?
Just protect the Christian West. Where will it end? Well, it ends with...
No. What do you mean Christian? I'm not... What are you talking about?
It ends...
Christian West.
It ends with taxation-funded fibre broadband in every home. Which bit of that sentence are you struggling with, mate?
So that's not the tax I've got to pay then?
No, it ends... You said, where does it end? I said it ends with taxation-funded fibre broadband in every home in the country. So I just want to help you...
Right.
I want to help you with your confusion about where it ends. That's where it ends.
I know, like, you know, so everyone gets free broadband. So, all right, that's lovely.
It's not free.
Where does it end?
It's not free, exactly. And I mean, insofar... Did you go to school, Lee?
Yeah, I went to school, James.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure.
Okay, and it was a state school, was it?
Yeah.
So did your dad turn up at the gate saying, where does it end? Do I get a free car as well? Or did it end with taxation funding your education?
Well, right, so people going to school, people having, you know, if they have on benefits, they can feed themselves, you know. Obviously, that's a basic necessity.
Yeah.
I just don't see where having broadband is a basic necessity.
Okay, well,
I've
already answered that question. I've already answered that question. I pointed out anybody who holds that view doesn't live in the 21st century.
Well, I'm living, and it's the 21st century. So
And you're using broadband every day, and you're using the internet every day.
Which I pay for.
You're using it every
At
single
my own
day.
personal choice.
Yes,
I haven't got to have it. I don't need it.
Okay.
I don't like, you know.
Well,
there's
do you
not
know
like,
what, Lee?
I must have it.
Do you want the good news?
Well, your argument is
No.
Because you're saying it's a basic
My
necessity,
argument's
and
falling
it's not.
apart, Lee. But do you want the good
Yeah,
news?
so
No,
what's
Lee,
the basic
I've got great
necessity?
news for you.
You've not got a basic necessity, James. The basic necessity is eating, drinking, water, food. That's basic necessity.
Lee.
Like a home to live in, out of the element.
Lee, do you want the good
Watching
news?
Netflix.
Actually, housing.
Necessity.
Why are we
James,
talking
you've
about?
lost.
Yeah,
You've lost.
Okay, can I speak
It's
now?
not a basic necessity, is it?
No, Lee. Here's the good news. When they come round to your house to fit it, you don't have to let them in. You can carry on if you want paying via pay. But you just said you don't want to pay for it. You're literally saying, here's the thing I use every day. I currently pay for it. It could be funded by taxation. I don't want that. I want to carry on paying. And I'm pretty sure that if you ask them nicely, they'll let you, Lee. Seriously.
Well, inevitably, personality is featuring in this election along with politics. And a simple question on the BBC this morning seemed to stump Boris Johnson.
Why are you relatable to families up and down across the country? How can they relate to you and your family?
Well, I think that the best answer I can give is that of course I've been I've had a very happy and wonderful life in many ways. I was the beneficiary of my parents gave me fantastic opportunities, and they brought me up to be very.
Muffy's in Fulham. Muffy, what would you like to say?
A lot of what you've said definitely makes sense.
Well, that's the first time for everything.
Actually, sometimes it doesn't, but today it did.
Carry on.
I completely agree with you that the institute of monarchy and individual people are not beyond reproach. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has problems. And nothing can be beyond reproach.
What do you think Johnson was playing at then when he said that last night?
I didn't actually watch it on television.
Well, you don't have to. I've just played you the clip.
I was watching part of it,
Yes.
or listening to part of it on the radio.
Yes.
No, I agree with you. Nothing is beyond reproach.
But I mean, why do you think he said it? I don't quite. I mean, it could have just been an off-the-cuff comment that he, on reflection,
Possibly, but then what did Corbyn say?
He said,
just
I think.
had a lovely laugh about it.
No, he didn't. He said, I think the monarchy could do with some improvement.
Well, he's right there too, but the audience made that sound bad. They should not have had an audience there, because all that clapping and laughing silliness actually undermined what Corbyn said, which did make sense.
Yes, you might be right. It's a slight digression. I suppose what I'm trying to nudge you towards is some sort of observation about the class-based nature of what Boris Johnson said. Because if we were to sort of amicably conclude that the monarchy represents the pinnacle of poshness, Johnson, to me, seems to subscribe to a school of thought that says once you achieve a certain degree of social status, then the normal rules don't apply to you. And I would say that about himself. And I might be reading too much into it, he seems to be saying that if you are at the pinnacle of social status in this country, then you are beyond reproach, you're beyond criticism, you're beyond scrutiny, and that's terrifying.
Oh, absolutely, that would be terrifying, but did he actually mean that?
As I don't know, that's why I was wondering.
The other thing I'd like to bring up, if I may,
yes,
is the way you are now referring to Andrew Windsor.
Yes, is that incorrect?
That is absolutely incorrect.
What should it be?
Whatever you think about him, his correct title is His Royal Highness Prince Andrew.
The paedophile's friend.
And it's the same with Meghan. Everybody seems to refer to her as Meghan. She's not Meghan. She's now the Duchess of Sussex.
Well, she's whoever she wants to be.
No, she's not.
Yes,
That's
she
her
is.
title.
Okay, can I say His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, the paedophile's friend?
How many friends have you got that may have done silly things or bad things?
Well, none that have been jailed for it, Muffy. How many have you got?
None that have been jailed, but I've had a number that have done silly things.
You think that raping teenage girls gets filed under silly things?
No, absolutely not.
I think you've delighted us for long enough.
Absolutely not.
Alex is in Camden. Alex, what would you like to say?
I think this is a witch hunt on Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. I think this is anti-Semitism. I think Jeffrey
Good grief, I thought the last call was mad. Amanda is in Datchet. Amanda, what would you like to say?
Hello there, yes. I just want to know, is it fair that we blanket the whole royal family for one member's actions? If somebody in my family did something wrong, would it be fair that everybody dissed my whole family for their actions?
I don't know that anyone is doing that, are they?
Well, I think that's what came over last night on the TV, was that,
well, let's listen to it again. Let's listen to it again.
Is the monarchy fit for purpose? Jeremy Corbyn.
Needs a bit of improvement.
Mr Johnson.
The institution of the monarchy is beyond reproach.
Where's the...
sort of tarring everyone with the same brush thing there.
First of all, I think Jeremy Corbyn is in no position to...
No, I didn't ask you that. I asked you,
about-
where's the tarring everyone with the same brush bit there in what I just played you?
Well, I think the monarchy needs some improvement, does it? I think it does. I think...
So you're agreeing with Jeremy Corbyn?
I agree that... No, I don't think the monarchy needs some improvement.
You don't think they should get rid of the man who hangs out with paedophiles?
So tell me, if you are friends...
I'm asking you questions. I'm asking you questions. Would the monarchy be improved by getting rid of a member who hangs around with paedophiles?
No.
Right. This is a fascinating phone-in, and I'd just like you to expand on that. So if you were friends with a paedophile, you don't think that your status would be improved by not being friends with them anymore?
I think you have to look at the whole picture.
I am.
Am I friends with the paedophile because he's a paedophile, or am I a friend with a friend?
Here you
because
are
he's
on the
been a friend
radio.
of mine?
Here you actually are on the radio, talking about the various circumstances in which you could be friends with a paedophile. I bet you didn't think this was going to happen when you woke up this morning, did you?
Do you want to let me finish?
Not really.
Okay, then there's no point me phoning in.
I don't like talking to people who can be friends with paedophiles, actually, or people who split hairs over it. But it's good that you agreed with Jeremy Corbyn. I bet you weren't expecting to do that when you woke up this morning either.
I did not agree with Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned, we had a major policy announcement today from Boris Johnson. He was on national insurance. It's not clear whether he actually meant to make this announcement, but anyway, this is what he told the BBC.
If we're lucky enough to be re-elected, so the first budget we will go up to the 9,500 threshold, and that will, as I say, put £500 into the pockets of everybody. We will then take a further step, and we'll set out the timescale at the budget in up to 12,500.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Conservative Minister Brandon Lewis. So there we had Boris Johnson there telling the BBC that raising the threshold for national insurance contributions to 9,500, it's about 8,600 at the moment, would save taxpayers £500 a year. Sounds good, but there's a problem. It's not true, is it?
Well, it's 8,632, I think, to be precise. And yes, in the first budget, it will go up to 9,500. What the Prime Minister was outlining is that, in due course, our ambition is to get to 12,500.
No, he wasn't. What he said was,
£500 a house.
in the first budget, we will go up to the 9,500 threshold. That's raising it by just shy of £1,000. And that will, as I say, put £500 into the pockets of everybody. It's not true, is it?
Well, I hadn't heard that interview until literally you just played it. What I can say to you is the numbers as I understand them to be, and what I've seen in the calculation is we're going to move the first budget to 9,500. That's
and how much will that be worth?
That's the equivalent of about £100 per person.
No, it's not.
But, okay,
it's not.
My understanding is about £100
It's worth about £85 a year. Okay. We spoke to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and we did this when when Mr Johnson, as he was then, promised this in the Tory campaign. So it's £85 a year this is worth, not 500.
Well, I haven't seen the IFS's calculation. Our calculation is it's worth about £100 per person.
Well, can we both agree it's not 500?
No, our ambition is to get to 12,500. That would be worth about £500 per person.
But he said 9,500. I mean, look, last night you set up a spoof fact-checking account on Twitter, but you're not so good at fact-checking your own facts, are you?
Well, I'm giving you the facts very clearly now, I think, Andrew, which is this initial budget will move it to 9,500. That's a tax cut for about 31 million people of £100 a year. Our ambition is to make sure they're £500 a year better off by moving it further. But let's also be very clear about last night. As your clip just showed, that was always very clear that it was from CCHQ. Its Twitter handle was still CCHQ Press.
It's just a pity they didn't fact-check the Prime Minister saying it's worth £500
I think if you look
when
at
it's closer to 100 and we think 85.
Well, I think if you look at what that was referring to in terms of that debate last night, it was quite rightly calling out some of the misrepresentation from the...
But you're misrepresenting what the value of this increase of the threshold is. It's not 500, it's under 100. You think about that, we think 85, so does the IFS.
Alan next in Mill Hill. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Eddie, how are you?
I'm good. What do you think of billionaires?
Well, I think Labour have got this obsession with the billionaires. I mean, there's 101?
151.
Billionaires in... 151, so, okay, 151 billionaires, and this obsession with billionaires. I mean, there's 100,000 millionaires, I believe, in the United Kingdom, I think, 100,000, of which those 100,000 contribute 29% of the UK's tax revenue. 29%. So you drive those people away, and those 100,000 or those 151 billionaires, we're going to be left back in this Marxist era of no food on the shelves, a bit like Russia.
Well, Alan, let's unpick this for a moment. Let's leave aside the millionaires, if we may. Let's talk about the 151. It would be quite something if they were all, as you put it, driven away. Where would the harm be in getting them to pay a bit more tax?
Do you know what they contribute in income tax? They probably contribute about 30%, or they probably contribute about 15% of the income tax. So you're going to drive them away. But why is there...
Why are you assuming that they would be driven away? What if it was... I don't know what the figure is, but let's say they're contributing 15%. If it was 16%, that would be a lot of money.
Eddie, how many people in the United Kingdom? How many people are there in the UK? There's an obsession. Even this is an obsession with these minute number of people
who have massive amounts of money. And you talk about the shelves being empty. There are people in this country for whom the shelves are empty because they can't afford to buy food.
100%. I get that, but it's still.
So why can't the very richest give a tiny proportion of their money to do massive amounts of good for the people who go to food banks?
But they do give money. They give tax.
But the food banks are still there, so perhaps tax them a little more.
Income tax, capital gains tax.
Yeah, why not tax them a little more?
But for what reason? Then you know what?
I've just mentioned the food banks.
For everybody.
I've just mentioned the food banks.
Eddie, how many people? The number of people who go to food banks is also, thank goodness, not that large. I mean,
it's growing. It's large and growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Labour says it will build 100,000 new council houses a year by 2024, and then 50,000 housing association, affordable homes from housing associations. How many council houses did you build last year?
Well, we built a significant number, and what I do know...
What's that number?
I don't have the exact number, Andrew,
okay,
but
we
built more than the last Labour government.
Yeah, but the last Labour government hardly built any.
During its entire period in office.
You built 2,640 local authority homes, even though there's a waiting list of about 1 million. 2,640. The year before, you built 1,750. I mean, it's derisory, isn't it?
We built 200, or rather the private sector built 244,000 homes last year. That was the highest level of house building for 30 years. But this is important.
No, hold on. You didn't build 240,000 new homes. What you did was to create net additional dwellings of 240,000, which involves new building, yes, but also conversion of existing property stock to residential use. You didn't build new, you converted quite a few as well. But I come back to the figure which was about council homes. We know there's a huge shortage of housing. It's one reason why house prices have risen so much. But you've only built 2,640 local authority homes in England last year.
Well, we're going to be building more homes in the social rented sector and also more homes in the private sector, Andrew. The fact is, if Labour got into power, investment in terms of housing would plummet. Are
you in favour of building a much bigger council stock?
I am in favour of building council houses, yes.
So
but
why don't you do
I'm also in favour of right to buy. I'm in favour of people who are council house tenants being able to buy their homes. And Labour are pledging to end right to buy in their manifesto.
But if you are in favour of more council houses, why aren't you doing it?
We are building more council houses.
Well, you're not. I've just given you the figures.
Andrew, we have a plan for government which is about having a bigger private sector that grows the economy. We can then afford, through taxes, to be able to invest in public housing. What Labour are failing to do in their manifesto is answering the key question of this election, which is what are they going to do about Brexit? The fact is that Labour...
you can't talk... I'm sorry, we're talking about housing.
But it's the missing thing.
You can't
They're not going to be able to do anything,
Look, this programme
They're not going to be able to do anything.
Endlessly about Brexit. I'm talking about housing, because it's actually one of the most important issues facing this country and doesn't get nearly enough airtime. And that's why I'm talking about housing, and it's also an important part of Labour's manifesto. And you're going to have some policies on it too. You say you had a plan. You have a plan. You had a plan in 2014 to build 200,000 new starter homes. That was 5 years ago. How many did you build?
Well, there haven't been as many starter homes as we would have liked.
How many did you build?
I don't have the exact numbers for you.
Well, it's easy to remember. It's zero. You built none under that plan. 200,000, zero in 5 years.
Well, this is an election, of course, in which a number of high-profile claims have already been debunked by independent fact-checkers. Well, I spoke to the Cabinet member, Michael Gove, a little earlier, and I asked him, would he apologise on behalf of the Conservatives for misleading voters, and would he rule out doing the same thing again?
No. I think it's absolutely right that we do provide a factual account of what Jeremy Corbyn was saying in that debate. There were a number of things that Mr Corbyn said that were simply not true, so we were calling him out on that. He was wrong about our policy on the NHS, and fundamentally also it's important that he's held to account for his policy failures, in particular his failure to say in the referendum that he's so keen on holding whether or not he would back Leave or Remain in that second referendum.
So you're not ruling out doing it again?
I'm just saying that it's absolutely right that we should be in a position where we can call out those untruths that Labour are responsible for.
OK. The fact of it being misleading, Twitter says any further attempts to mislead people by editing verified profile information in a manner seen during the UK election debate will result in decisive corrective action. Twitter thinks you misled people.
Well, I'm sure...
Did you mislead people, Mr. Gove?
No. Twitter will have its own view, and I respect Twitter's view, but the only misleading that was going on was Jeremy Corbyn misleading people about our policy on the NHS.
How
and Jeremy
Corbyn...
Corbyn...
know it's from the Conservative Party?
Because it said so. It was there was a direct link to the Conservative Party
point
website.
To me, you show me.
It was a direct link to the Conservative Party website.
You point to where it says Conservative.
I shan't, because this is your computer. I don't know what you've been doing
This
to it.
is what appeared on the Conservative CCHQ press Twitter feed last night.
It pointed out that we were checking facts, and it was from CCHQ.
So that's not misleading people, you think?
No, it's from CCHQ.
So the voters we've shown it to this morning, nobody knew what CCHQ was.
Well, I'm terribly sorry that you found people who didn't know that.
They said it was misleading.
I'm sure if you find enough people in the street, I'm sure you can find people who will corroborate your version of accounts.
Have you got form on this, Mr. Gove? This is Vote Leave saying
that is not
they will
fact-checking.
ban tea kettles. You led Vote Leave. There are now people from Vote Leave involved in the Conservative election campaign.
Of course there are.
Is this a
lie?
You
No.
recognise this one, though?
One of the things about...
Do you recognise this one, Mr. Gove?
I certainly... Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think is important...
So the EU wants to ban kettles. Is that a lie?
No, it's not. The EU had particular rules which related, in their view, to energy policy, which meant that there were particular types of electrical device that they wanted to ban, as they have banned particular types of light bulbs in the past.
They were talking about energy efficiency. They didn't want to ban kettles.
Yes,
so
that means that there were... No, it's not. It means that there were certain kettles that you could no longer manufacture. You use the L word. That's a very powerful word. What you're attempting to do is to make a polemical case
against... No, I'm just asking for the truth in this election.
No, you're making a polemical case for a particular viewpoint.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you for the truth. Do you believe in the truth in an election campaign, Mr. Gove? Do you believe in telling the truth?
Because you have a particular outlook, because you...
I don't have a particular outlook. This is scrutiny, Mr. Gove. You want to talk about getting Brexit in?
Yes.
You said that the transition period could not be extended. Now, is that true or false? Because
It
people
won't be
deserve to know
extended.
before an election, don't they? It won't be extended,
yes,
but it could be extended.
Well, if you had, for the sake of argument, a Labour government, if you had Jeremy Corbyn, then what we would have would be not just months but years of uncertainty. If we have a majority Conservative government with a working majority, we can get Parliament working again, and as a result of that, we will be able to make sure that we can move on to the people's priorities. And our announcement today, which I know that you will cover fairly, of additional investment in agriculture and in the environment for the lifetime of the whole Parliament, will be underpinned.
We have your word that it won't be extended, not that it couldn't be extended. And of course, your word was also that Boris Johnson was not fit to be Prime Minister. Then you served under Boris Johnson. Your word was that we didn't vote to leave the EU with no deal. Then you became the Minister for no deal. Can people trust your word in this election, Mr. Gove?
Well, that was a good speech, and I'm sure it would go down well on any election platform.
These are things that you have said, are they not?
Well, they're things that...
I'm quoting your own words at you.
No, you're not. You're making a polemical argument, which you're very good at.
Quoting your own words. You said
I think,
no deal.
as someone who was a journalist in the past and wrote polemics and then became a politician, then of course you're well on the way to going down that route.
Can we take your word in this election that you will deliver what you say you will?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just look at our record in government. We have delivered a good deal. And now that we have this good deal, we will be able to leave the European Union on January the 31st if we get a working majority, and I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Hi, you keep saying, Alan, it's one of the things that I've kept hearing over and over again, is that we can't make our own laws because of the EU, and it's something that a previous caller's just asked. Let's say we left on the 31st of January and we're out. What one thing would you change straight away that we cannot do now that is going to vastly enhance my life for the better?
Well, I don't know what will enhance your life for the better unless you tell me, but what I do know is that from that date, we will be free. And the one thing I must make quite clear, I think everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people imagine that the instant we leave, somehow all the bureaucracy that we've suffered over the years is going to disappear. It will have to be a very gradual business of repeal and introducing new things. No, hang on. I'm trying to give you the responsible answer, which is there isn't going to be a magic wand on January the 31st. But what we will be able to do from then on is to set up trade deals, which we can't at the moment, and they will take a while to set up. You won't get them on February the 1st. And what we can do is look at all the regulation which we have got from the EU. For example, let me give you one. Fishermen's nets, which you may think is a bit esoteric. But actually, I've got fishermen in the constituency in which I'm standing, who have, and indeed throughout the southwest, which I already represent as an MEP, who are facing a massive drop in their income because the EU has prescribed new net sizes through which some of their catch is just going to disappear.
And if you don't mind, if I could just interrupt and just have sort of 20 seconds there.
Yeah.
Fishing makes up such a tiny, tiny proportion of the GDP of this country. It's pathetic that the Brexit Party continually bang on about fishing when your leader...
No control over our own waters.
In 10 years. What about the finances? What about the banking industry? What about the technology industry that is going to be gutted and destroyed by Brexit?
Iain?
My question, in fairness, was what one thing is going to enhance my life by leaving the EU and being able to make our own laws?
What job do you do, Iain?
I work for myself. I'm self-employed as a financial advisor. I have a good standard of living. I'm comfortable. I've never known my life in any other way than being within the EU.
Okay, well,
I don't see a single benefit to me or my family to leave in the EU. And I'd like Anne to tell me.
Well, give him one benefit.
Well, I mean, I've already given 3 benefits several times.
Well, the fishing nets doesn't benefit him, does it?
I'm not talking about that. I said I've already given 3 benefits, that we can make our own laws, we can repeal such laws.
But what law would you like to make that we can't do now?
I'm jolly going to finish the sentence. Which is that we can make our own laws, we can control our own borders, and we also can do our own trade deals. Now, those to me are such big benefits that they absolutely overarch everything. But if you want a little one, well, I've already mentioned it once tonight. High street shops, for example, gradually going under. People suffer when the high street shops disappear.
How has the EU contributed to that?
And what we're saying is that we will, well, I'm just telling you what the Brexit Party is going to do, that we are going to abolish the business rates that cause them such problems.
But we could do that in the EU as well.
Well, actually, yes, we could do that within the EU, but there are other financial things that we can't do.
All he's asking is something that a new law that you want to bring in that we couldn't at the moment, that will affect Iain's life for the better.
Well, all I can say is, Iain, that there are many things that we can do, but if you want me to give you one snap law that's going to benefit you, then all I can say is, if you won't benefit from an independent Britain, if all you're concerned about is your desk and your revenues, sorry, I can't help you.
Reg is in Kingswood. Reg, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello,
okay, I'm at the other side of this equation. I pay ridiculously high taxation. Ridiculous.
Was it 45, the top rate now, or is it 40?
I think it's 40. I'm almost creeping to 48 somewhere along the way, my accountant tells me. But anyway.
Well, not on income tax, you're not. So what is the top rate of income tax at the moment?
I think it's 45.
Right. Above what threshold?
Above 80. or 50. I don't even know the numbers, to be honest with you. But
it's very important that we establish this. If you're going to cast yourself as the big hitter, as it were, I think is it not 45% above £150,000? I mean, you need a new accountant, Reg. He's ripping you off blind.
The numbers are so ridiculous.
No, it's not that. You tell me what you think the top rate of tax is, and tell me what you think the threshold is for that top rate of tax. Otherwise, I don't see how you...
I think you're dead right on the 150. I can't remember where 40 kicks in and where 45 kicks in.
Right.
I think it's 150.
Okay.
Okay, but my thing is,
You're going to crack on with this. You just phoned in, and you didn't know what the tax thresholds were, but you're here to tell me that they're awful.
They're awful, Jay.
But you didn't know what they were.
Yes, I get that. That's why I've got an accountant. He gives me my bill, and then we have to pay it.
Well, I think he's ripping you off. Seriously.
My accountant?
Well, if you didn't know what the top threshold was, or the top tax rate, and you're just taking what he tells you as gospel...
I'm like Henry...
I think he's... Mate, I've got him on the other line. He's in the Cayman Islands. He's just bought a new yacht. Anyway, anyway, I'll get my violin out, and you tell me why you pay too much tax.
Yes, we pay too much tax. And one of the things that gets to me is I'm in a position where we assess credit applications in our business.
Yes.
And I see how much tax credit we pay to multinational firms. So my tax, your tax, James, goes to subsidize their payrolls, for example. And I wouldn't name names because I don't want any litigation. But
well, if it was true, there wouldn't be any litigation, would there?
Well, it's true. It's true, and we see it. These people that don't even pay corporation tax. What I think politicians need to rise up and do is for everybody to pay an equal rate of tax of somewhere around 20-25%. I'll give you a simple example that works very, very well. Is the VAT. If you now leave Leicester Square and you're going to go buy a bit of tool for your house in Chiswick there, right?
Yes.
You would buy and you would pay 20% VAT on that tool.
Yes.
If a multi-billionaire comes around and they need the same sort of tool, they will pay 20% of that tool. What happens is this tax on ambition. So people want to progress.
I think you're talking gibberish. And if you'd only known what the tax rates were that you're here to condemn, then I might have given you a little bit more time to expand upon your theory of epic selfishness. But I think I've given you too much time already, Reg. No hard feelings, mate. But seriously, next time you ring in to talk about the tax, just check the numbers. And of course, VAT is a punitive tax. It's a horribly punitive tax because a single mother who is existing on universal credit pays the same percentage of VAT as a billionaire on everything. And that's rank. Which is why, when you see the stories about the top 1% of earners pay 30% of income tax, it is deliberately designed to let... I'm going to use my words carefully, to let dangerous crud like that gain credibility. But thank you so much for the call.
Helen is in Oxted. Royal family, fit for purpose, Helen? Hello.
Definitely. I've just come in from shopping and I'm sick to death of people knocking the monarchy, wanting to do away with the House of Lords, wanting to tear everything down. The pageantry that we do to the second when we put these things on with the gold coach going down the mile, it's uplifting. Who's going to be in its place? Flaming Corbyn? I mean... There's a magic to this sort of thing which people need. And this modern generation seem to be tearing at everything. Yes, Prince Andrew made a mistake and he mixed with a lowlife. And there's often one in every family that does something awful. But the Queen is wonderful. And I'm so angry with people that want to destroy everything.
Well, my point, Helen, isn't it Prince Andrew that we should be thinking about here? Isn't it his behaviour that's raising these questions?
It was appalling. And I also think the BBC should have pulled back and notified the Queen of what was happening instead of Emily Maitlis taking the kudos from a wonderful briefing. The outcome from it of the people that hate royalists all ringing in and the Queen, I mean, she's 93, she shouldn't have to go through this. I think the whole thing has been very, very badly managed. Yes, I don't think anything of him, and yes, the royalty is being slimmed down anyway. But without the royal family, we have no magic.
Helen, thank you.
Rosanna is in Hendon. Rosanna, what would you like to say?
Well, you were saying about what we're afraid of, and I think that we are just heeding the warnings of our parents and grandparents who were in Germany and well, I mean, I'm thinking particularly of my father-in-law who was thrown out of what was then Czechoslovakia.
Yes.
And he remembers the barber who had cut his hair since he was born, and all his family waving and smiling as they went. And he said that the support that they had of the Nazis, they voted in an anti-Semite, and that's what we are afraid of. That is the whole thing. It's not.
And what would you? And I ask this very calmly and kindly. What would you point at in Jeremy Corbyn that you think has echoes of Adolf Hitler?
Obviously, I'm not comparing him.
Well, with respect, you just did.
Okay, well, the fact that he has never backed down from an opinion. He has got a one-way opinion as far as Israel's concerned, and of Palestine.
We're not talking about Israel, and we're not talking about Palestine. We're talking about Nazi persecution of the Jews. And as a non-Jew, and as someone who doesn't hold a torch for Jeremy Corbyn, I find that breathtaking, and I think you really need to back it up, Rosanna. So what is it about Jeremy Corbyn that reminds you of Adolf Hitler's Nazi party?
It's not just one thing.
You can name as many things as you want.
Well, each thing shows that and he always...
What things? What are we talking about? Because I'm quite strong on 1930s Germany. I know exactly how Hitler marshalled anti-Semitism as a political force and used it long before he achieved full power, used it as an incredibly potent weapon. So where are the examples of Jeremy Corbyn using anti-Semitism as a political weapon?
Well, I'm not saying he's using it as an anti...
we probably shouldn't have mentioned the Nazis then, Rosanna.
Probably shouldn't have. Okay, I shouldn't have said
but here you
from
are.
that point of view, but you actually said to me, you actually asked what we're afraid of.
Yes, but you know how this programme works, and then after the what, you get the why.
Maybe using him and saying putting him with a Nazi was wrong.
Well, not maybe. I mean, either you can point at something that says that reminds me of the Nazis, or you can't. And at the moment, you can't.
The feeling at the moment, the undercurrent of anti-Semitism is like the undercurrent leading up to the war.
There was no undercurrent of anti-Semitism in 1930s Germany. It was absolutely everywhere.
Well, maybe before that then, as it was leading in. The blame of everything on the Jews, not everything, but a lot of it on the Jews.
So again, I'm sorry to badger you, but I want an example. I just want one example of something that stands comparison with 1930s Germany that Jeremy Corbyn could be reasonably accused of. Because I've got nothing.
No, it's not. It's little things. That's the thing. It is little things.
Well, there's nothing little about the Nazis, is there, or the Holocaust? And you did begin by saying that you fear repetition of that era and those politics, and we end with you, I think, perhaps recognising that there's no evidence for that position at all.
The reason people fear him coming in is that the undercurrent is getting louder, and...
Yeah, but then I'm going to ask for examples again.
Well, look, one after the other of Labour candidates who feel that they can come out and say things that are denying the Holocaust or
I'm not aware of any Labour candidates denying the Holocaust.
I think they may not have denied, but they have definitely belittled. And
plenty of people on the right do that daily.
Yes.
I mean, most of the biggest Holocaust deniers one can think of are right-wing, not left-wing. So again, I'm really struggling to see, and you're not alone in doing it, and I certainly don't want to minimise your concerns, and I'm confident that I haven't. But if people are going to reach for the Nazi analogies, with love, Rosanna, they need a hell of a lot more evidence than you've got. Otherwise, actually, I mean, it's a vile thing to accuse someone of. It's not something you should do lightly. He reminds me of Hitler. Is the subtext of what you've said. What do you fear? A repeat of the persecution of Jews undertaken by the Nazis. That's an appalling thing to say about somebody if you really stop and think about it, unless you've got evidence. And undercurrents and are not evidence.
Albert says, how can the authorities stop what I thought was a lawful and human right to peaceful protest in this country? People who fought wars and died for, don't parents have any rights? Yes, they do. The protest goes on, Albert. What they can't do is use loud hailers to shout at the children and intimidate the staff. The protest goes on. Andy says, you've totally lost me on this. I'm not Muslim. I'm a normal English person. Lay off the children with your support for these nut job woke values, otherwise known as tolerance. Amar is in Streatham. You're on the radio, Amar. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
What you
I just called to say that I completely agree with the parents with regards to stopping this teaching. I don't know about Birmingham, but definitely in London, some children leave school not able to read or write. Why are we not concentrating on fundamental education? And why are we teaching children all of these things? Let kids be kids. And with regards to the protest as well, I wanted to say, sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to say that by the term protest, I mean, the suffragettes protesting, was it ever peaceful? She jumped in front of a horse. Like, when are protests really, really peaceful? It's about being heard.
Yes. Let me ask you this. The dad with whom we just spoke, he's got 2 children at a school. How does one of his children say to his little mates at school, I've got 2 dads? Or indeed, how does someone else say, I've got 2 mums? How are children meant to process that if they've not had... This isn't like they do it every day, by the way. These classes... go on, sorry.
No, sorry, you could finish. Sorry, Nick.
Well, these classes, I think, as I recall, there are about 4 classes per term. 4 lessons on it.
I still think that they should be... But 4 lessons per term are still lessons. Children are leaving school without fundamental education. They can't even do maths.
Right.
And you're teaching them all of this stuff. I'm not being funny. I'm a single parent, Nick. Are they going to start writing books about single parenting? I'm the single parent. Are they going to start doing classes on that? I mean, does it really matter? At the moment, we should be concentrating on teaching them maths, English, and teaching them how to go out and work. And it's not happening, but we're teaching them LGBT, who the parents are.
But they don't have to be mutually exclusive, do they? We can do both. Surely.
Well, I mean...
and you're right, we need to improve. I absolutely agree with you. We need to improve literacy and numeracy. But I don't think it should be at the expense of tolerance, surely.
But the thing is, I mean, there's a difference between teaching tolerance and teaching LGBT rights. I mean, they don't teach in my daughter's school. My daughter's 7. They don't teach in her school, about single parenthood. They don't teach about... I mean, these are lessons that just aren't... I mean, if the children are leaving school without fundamentals of education, like, as you said, numeracy and literacy, that needs to be what we need to be teaching our children. And it's just as simple as that, so they can leave school and work in the community.
All right. Amar, good luck as a lone parent, single parent. I wish you nothing but success. Thank you for your input, right or wrong.
Ali's in Great Yarmouth. Ali, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Just like to say first time caller, first of all.
Very well.
Tried plenty of times, but gave up sometimes. But anyway, basically, my reason why I think he's not apologising is really, Jeremy Corbyn never has been, never will be a politician. He is, at heart, a political activist. Just like any true activist, you have to stay true to your principles. If you are not true to your principles, your activism stands for nothing. And that is why I believe he is refusing to apologise.
What's the principle? What's the principle that he's standing by here?
He's got his own principles. I think that this is my belief. I may be wrong, I may be right. Yes. But his principle, and by his associations and from the talks that we've been told he's done in the past, he is obviously pro-Palestine, all right? And is obviously anti-Israel. What that goes to now, the problem with talking against anything
you remember, I did just discipline the last caller for bringing in issues that have nothing to do with either what the chief rabbi said yesterday or Jeremy Corbyn's refusal to apologise. I'm not accusing you of that yet. I'm not accusing you of that yet. I'm just warning you what happened to the last caller.
No. I'm trying to explain why I think he's an activist. So in the past, he has been pro-Palestine, all right? And he probably still is pro-Palestine.
Right. I think most British governments the last several years have been in favour of a Palestinian state, haven't they?
Exactly, yes. Correct. Okay. However, obviously, Israel is not in favour of a Palestinian state, all right? Now, the problem is anyone who talks about that is at a big risk of looking to be anti-Semitic. And that is probably his fear, all right? He doesn't want to say sorry because he probably then would need to explain. He might be questioned as to why, about his associations and so on and so forth, and he has to say sorry about all of that. He doesn't want to start essentially a domino effect.
Well, hang on. This is from just over a year ago. All right, let's have a look. And I'm not entirely sure what's contained within this clip, but I trust my producer implicitly, so I'm sure it's going to be both fruitful and pertinent.
I'm sorry for the hurt that's been caused to many Jewish people
We have been too slow in processing disciplinary cases of mostly online anti-Semitic abuse by party members. We're acting to speed this process up. People who hold anti-Semitic views have no place in the Labour Party. People who use anti-Semitic poison need to understand you do not do it in my name or the name of my party. You are not our supporters. And anyone who denies that this has surfaced within our party is clearly actually wrong and contributing to the problem. I want to make it clear that any government I lead will take whatever measures are necessary to support and guarantee the security of all Jewish communities and their culture. I acknowledge there is a real problem of anti-Semitism that Labour is working to overcome.
That shoots your fox a bit, doesn't it, Ali?
I tell you why there's a big difference here. A year ago was a year ago. Right now is an election campaign.
Right.
All right.
So you think it's a... Sorry, that wasn't me. That spluttering wasn't a reflection on your contribution.
Sorry.
But you think that what he did last night was a vote winner?
No, it wasn't. That's my point. That's my point. He's not a politician, James.
No, but your whole point was that he can't apologise because ... and there he is apologising absolutely unequivocally. So that means your theories...
A year ago. He's not a good politician, James. He does not know how to play politics.
Ali, I'm just going to put you on pause because I don't think you heard the words that I said. Your entire argument was that he can't apologise and he didn't apologise because if he did ... and then there he is offering an absolutely unequivocal apology. So you're just wrong, mate.
I don't think I'm wrong. Well,
that is why British politics is where it is. You said he can't apologise because X would happen. There he is apologising. But it's a year later, so apparently everything's different. Back to Nigerians. Regina is in Lee Green. What would you like to say, Regina?
Hi, James. I am originally from Zimbabwe.
You forgot my name then, didn't you?
No, I'm a bit nervous, so please do forgive me.
Carry on.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say I don't agree with Boris Johnson's way of politics. I don't think he is racist. He stereotypes Nigerians, and
what is the stereotype? What is the stereotype here?
They are quite aggressive when it comes to making money, and my experience both back in Zimbabwe and here is that they will put money before people. So the most extreme one, which
would you be comfortable saying that about any other ethnicity or religious grouping?
Not if that's their trait. Not if I've seen that a majority of them are like that. So
if somebody felt that Jewish people were like that, you'd be cool with someone saying that they're almost Jewish interest in money?
Well, I'll have to ask them why they say Jewish.
And they'd say the same as you. They'd say, I've met a lot of Jews and they're really interested in money. Which is what you're saying to me about Nigerians.
You'll have to give me concrete examples. The thing is, I've had... hello?
I'm sorry. So you've had real-life experiences of greedy Nigerians, therefore you think all Nigerians are greedy?
Not all of them.
Well, that's what he said. He said a Nigerian... a handful. So he's referring to a handful of Nigerians, but he's just not mentioning that. He's making it look like he's referring to all of them. Because surely all societies have got a handful of greedy people in them, haven't they?
I think Nigerians, a lot of people would say that they are...
Yes?
They are aggressive, and I think their relationship with money is... it's unhealthy.
And if somebody said that about Jews, how do you think the chief rabbi would feel?
Like, again, if it's true of a number... I mean, you have to have examples.
So it can't be anti-Semitism because the Jews really do run the world.
No. I said you have to have... You can't just say something without backing it up.
Well, you did.
But I said I've got examples, real-life examples.
Yeah, and then we went from suddenly saying, I think he's right, to saying, well, it's only a handful.
I thought the question was, is he being racist in general?
No, the question was, what do you think he means?
Well, if he means it's all Nigerians, then I don't agree with him.
What else could it mean? And a Nigerian interest, what does that mean? It means it's a national trait.
Then he is wrong, because I don't think it's all of them. Nigeria is a very big country.
It's just some of them, then. Knocking at the door there, Regina. I'll leave the Jewish parallel hanging. I'm not comfortable with it, but seeing as the other party leader is under attack this week from the chief rabbi for failing properly to address accusations of anti-Semitism, it seems to me a pertinent question. When he was editor of The Spectator, and he said an almost Nigerian interest in money. Explain to me how that phrase is in any way philosophically or morally different from describing an almost Jewish interest in money. Jewish people historically, of course, have had to deal with centuries of allegations of greed. So let's look for some good bits, if we can find them. What went well, do you think, for the Prime Minister? 6 minutes after 11 is the time. David is in Chelsea. David, what would you like to say?
I'd just like to say that I find your attitude incredibly patronising.
Right, I've barely started, David, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about Boris Johnson. What do you think went well
Boris
for?
Johnson apart. You asked a specific question about Boris Johnson. How does he get away with it?
Yes.
He gets away with it because he's got a certain amount of charm.
Right.
Whether good or bad, if you like him or don't like him,
Sorry, he gets away with what?
Gets away with telling lies, according to you.
Well, no, not according to me.
Well, according to the general consensus, then, if you like.
Yes.
Not according to Boris Johnson. He's not telling lies as far as he's concerned.
Right.
Now, every politician in my life has told lies. Everybody. They all tell lies. Tony Blair was one of the biggest liars.
Yes.
Okay? It's nothing new. You have to go through it yourself and to decide what
so, listen,
what you think is true or not true.
Well, I don't think we do. We don't decide what is true and what is not true, David. That's kind of the point. But I'd hate to patronise you.
What I mean was, who is telling the truth?
Yes, but that's not what you said. But I don't want to patronise you. So tell me what you think went well in the interview this morning.
I think his charm comes across.
No, I'm not interested in his charm. I'm interested in the content of the interview.
The content of the interview?
Yes.
I didn't listen to all of it. I didn't listen to parts of it.
Well, that's all right. The parts that you heard.
Halfway through.
The parts that you heard.
I don't think anything came out particularly well.
Oh.
I don't think any politician comes across particularly well in this election. But one thing I would like to say is I'm not voting for Boris Johnson. I'm voting for a front.
Well, hang on. Yeah. We're not interested in how you're voting during the election period because there are constituency issue specifics that we're not allowed to broadcast. So.
But you're implying that Boris Johnson is president of the UK.
Right,
We're
David,
not voting for Boris Johnson, are we?
Well, OK. I'm not quite sure what to say to you, David. You sound very angry, but you're not entirely sure what you're angry about.
I'm not angry. I just find that your attitude a bit patronising.
Yes, but some people...
And it's very easy when you're not accountable yourself.
Some people feel patronised when they've been made to feel silly.
Well, that's Nick Ferrari. Should have come across with that. He should have said, "Look, I'm feeling silly with your answers."
No. I was talking about you.
But Nick, I wasn't conducting an interview. If I was conducting an interview, I might have asked different questions.
But how do you know? You didn't hear it. How can you criticise Nick?
Now you're being patronising.
No, I'm not being patronising. You're being silly. That was the point I was making.
That's what I mean about you being patronising.
That's what I mean about you being silly.
No, you love that, don't you?
What?
Telling people they're silly.
Pardon?
You love telling people they're silly.
Only silly people.
Oh, God. Look, listen.
No. Carla's in Sevenoaks. Carla, what would you like to say?
I'm a Boris fan.
Yes.
And,
why?
Everyone's got a past, and I think people have got it in for him a little bit at the moment.
So what would you say to them to show them the error of their ways? What would you point at as his sort of crowning glories?
Well, I just think he's being natural and he's doing a good job.
Yeah, then it'll be easy to come up with some evidence.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you've got to give the guy a chance, haven't you? I mean, at the end of the day, more voted out than voted in, and I don't even know why we're having this discussion.
Well, it's because you rang the radio station, Matthew, with your phone.
Right, but we all voted out.
Yes, you're a Boris fan, you said. I'd like to know why.
Well, because I just like his personality, and I think he's.
But as a prime minister, what do you admire about him? What would you point if somebody sceptical listening to this said, "Well, give me some arguments, some points I can make next time I'm having a political discussion."
I just see him as a stronger leader.
Yes, and the evidence for that is.
Well, just personal opinion.
No, but what's he done to inform that opinion?
Well, I mean, he's not really been in the job that long, has he?
Well, then we can go for the 8 years he was Mayor of London, if you want. You live in town.
Well, you could also say the same about Sadiq Khan. I mean, Sadiq Khan is...
But we're not, are we? We're talking about you being a fan of Boris Johnson and me saying why. So why would you answer that question with Sadiq Khan? That doesn't make any sense at all.
You've kind of got me there, but...
I haven't got you at all. I'm just waiting for you to give me one reason to admire Boris Johnson from his record.
Well, I just think this morning with Nick Ferrari...
Yes.
Who's a brilliant presenter,
yes.
Like yourself.
I agree. Well, no, I agree with the first bit. I also agree with the second bit, but I didn't mean to say that out loud.
Yeah.
But don't wriggle off the hook. What did he do or say that you can point to fairly unequivocally as evidence of his qualities?
I just think overall, in that hour that he was on LBC this morning, he defended himself impeccably.
Well, give me the bit you thought was impeccable, because he was wrong about... He didn't know how many trade negotiations he had going on. He was wrong about the amount of compensation that was given to people who'd been flooded. He refused to answer the question of how many children he's got. I could go on, but I won't, because that's not fair. Just give me one thing to put on the other side of the scales that he handled really well.
I just think overall, he was kind of attacked and put to challenge. So
what challenge do you think he dealt with well?
Well, just overall, I don't know.
But just give me one example, Matthew. You're on national radio, bigging up the guy, and we're short of admirers, so just give us the sort of, evidence.
I'm not sure, James.
OK, mate. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So you're a big fan, you just don't know why.
Well, there you go. You're clearly more of a Corbyn man, aren't you?
Well, you clearly don't listen to my programme, Matthew. It's not a football match, mate. It's not a question of picking a side and then defending it. You could probably describe me as one of Corbyn's harshest critics. I know that his closest advisors do, so leave me out of it. Back to you. You're a big fan of Boris, but you can't think of a single reason why.
All right, mate. Listen, have a nice weekend.
And you, Matthew.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.